Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmitty, Swanny and Clarkey visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. All right, how are we all?
Very well indeed.
Is it me or has it been a little while since we recorded last?
It has been a little while, and that's because I've been able to leave WA.
Hey,
so I'm really happy.
What?
Yeah, finally. So I'm just back from going east to see my family, and I feel all topped up. It was just really good to see them and reconnect with them and just hang out. Really, that's all it really was. But I feel really energized by it, which is really nice. Everything feels like it's going to be okay.
Wow.
What about you guys?
Great.
Not so much.
Oh goodness, we've had a week and a half of lots of visitors. So we had some friends come up on the Wednesday before Easter, and they went on the Monday. Then we had someone come up on Tuesday and stay till Thursday. Then we had more people come up on Friday and stay till Sunday. So we've been
bed and breakfast,
a little bit like a sweatshop doing
laundry,
beds.
Oh my God,
linen.
that is it, isn't it? When we lived abroad and people would come and stay with us all the time, I could handle everything. It was just the changing of the beds, and they'd leave sometimes. I'd be like, "Don't strip it because I don't want it hanging around. I just leave it and I'll do it myself. I prefer to take the whole lot off." But it's that and getting it, laundered and ironed and back on. I feel you. It's like running an Airbnb.
Did you say ironed and back on?
Yes, I iron out all our linen for our beds.
You used to, or you do?
Well, that's an interesting story in itself.
Nutcase.
It used to be done by the person who helped us out, and then it was continued to be done by someone an ironing lady, and now I don't even have an ironing lady. So there you go. So now I actually take it because only with some of our beds, but some of our beds have a particular linen on it. So I take them to the dry cleaners and they launder them there and iron them.
Wow.
But that's only for some big beds. It's not like normal. It's Schmitty, you might remember in the UK there was a company called the White Company, right? And all they do is a particular type of linen. You can't wash it and put it on a bed. It doesn't work that way. It needs to be ironed.
Yeah,
so
I've got.
I need to get rid of it. Let's be honest. I need to phase that out.
When we come over and
nice
have an all-together session, can we burn that stuff?
No.
That's just time in your life.
No, well, it never used to be my problem. This is awful.
Of us recording in one place in one time.
This used to be it never used to be an issue for me because somebody else did it for me, and now it has become something that I might well have to phase out. Because it doesn't need to be on. It's on too many beds here. If it was on like one, I'd cope with it. But I've even got it on the kids' beds and stuff. It's too much work.
There's not enough time in your life for this shit.
I'm dry dishes.
Who, me?
Oh no!
In a dishwasher?
Dry dishes?
No. Dishes dry themselves.
Doesn't a dishwasher do that? Forgive me.
No, even if you hand wash, you just leave it till they
seriously,
dry.
I'm not even asking them. Oh no, I don't do any washing up.
I air dry them. I don't believe it.
I even get annoyed when people pick up a tea towel. Like, just stop it.
So do I.
Do it itself.
So do I. I'm like, oh, for God's sake, it'll dry itself in time. Leave it there. All right. So, what are we drinking?
Well, we're having Tinto again. You might recall we had this a number of months back. It's called Tinto di Verano.
Yes.
It comes from a lovely little winery in Colbanaban.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Beautiful.
It's like a Spanish kind of red wine with a bit of a lemony taste through it.
Mm.
Very, very nice.
Spritz. Yeah.
Well, I'm drinking a Matzo's alcoholic ginger beer.
Western Australia.
And I feel like it was sort of on recommendation of Carla, but basically what happened was last night I was editing the Ed Gein one, the 2 episodes ago, where Carla talks about it discovering alcoholic ginger beers. And in a moment, in a blinding flash of inspiration, I decided to order some ginger beer and have it sent to Carla. So later, I know you're going to crack that open.
I am.
After you've done the school run.
I think I might. There's actually this one. You've sent 2 different types through, and one does sound particularly potent. One's called Amplis, spicy alcoholic ginger beer, and it's a 6.9% alcohol, and it's in a bigger can, and it's black with a
No
black top on
idea.
it. That one says,
I can't
I'm
wait
serious.
for your
Actually, I
sentence.
saw that in the shop today. So if that's nice, let me know.
I will.
Carla, for now.
Tell me you're on a DC after.
No, I don't have anything with me. I forgot. Don't worry about it. I'm just ready to do my story. But having looked at this, I'm doing a comparison.
She's going to do a tasting later.
The big black one, it is actually the equivalent of 2 standard drinks.
I beg your pardon?
That's only one. So that one's going to be the one to go with. But I'm going to be quick.
Size does matter.
Bang for your buck. I'll be like, I'll having to do a bit of catch up. I'll have to like shotgun that thing.
Oh, don't do that.
After pick up.
Yeah, after pickup, and then you'll end up spewing in a bucket while we're waiting for the rest of the story.
Imagine that getting pulled over. It's like, have you had a drink in the last, I don't know how many hours, etc. Yeah, in the last 15 minutes, actually.
Yeah,
what was that?
I just
thought I'd do
ginger beer.
a cheeky drink before pickup. I'm sure they'd be happy with that. Anyway,
Okay.
Should we move on to the story?
No, let us introduce ourselves first. I'm Swanny.
I'm Swanny.
And I'm Clarky.
And together we are
Trial by
Wine.
Wonderful. Okay.
Well played.
Let us move on to the story now.
Okie doke. So this story, when I first started looking into it, I was so sad. It actually made me cry. But now that I have done a little bit more research and
abort.
No.
Yeah.
And I've been able to sort of find some of the other side stories and issues associated with it, I think that it will make us feel quite angry and also quite uplifted. So I think there's a little bit of everything for us.
Angry and uplifted.
Yeah, it's a good story, I think. Not for the person involved, I wouldn't think, but it's a tale where it's not all bad. It's certainly not all good, but there's somewhat of a better ending than some of the other stories that we've had. So
persevere.
Yeah.
Because I'm angry after most of the shows that we do.
Oh, yeah, this is definitely it will fit in our defective detective file. I know, I'm so sorry. Okay,
my sphincter just tightened already. Okay, let's go for it.
So my sources have been ABC News America, Wikipedia. What would I do without you?
Nice.
I've watched 2 different Diane Sawyer interviews. One was from 2011 and one was from 2016. I've also used Inside Edition. I've also referenced the National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children. Bit of a hint there.
Oh, no.
I've watched interviews with the University of Berkeley, University of California, some videos with their police department there.
Jesus, you've been busy.
Well, there's a lot of stuff to watch, and that's what's quite interesting about this. So
it's extraordinary because yesterday you said I better get a story. So
wow,
what have you been doing for 24 hours?
I've been doing coke for the last 18 hours to stay awake. Jeepers.
Bit of speed, no problem.
Well, no, it's not that hard. Like when I started looking at it, there's lots of online stuff. Again, not online. That's not the right word. A lot of interviews and. You know, if you wanted to go and have a look at it, it's all there. And sometimes I find that when I'm pulling a story together or trying to find one, sometimes it's seeing people, the way they speak or the way they interact when they're interviewed that you get a bit of the colour. Whereas sometimes when it's just, you're reading about a story or whatever else, it's like, oh, that's terrible or it's sad or whatever else. But it's actually some of the other stuff that, is usually the freakiest bit or some little quote that, is not in a dry document. So I like to watch stuff as well as try and find it and writing to sort of.
I like to watch.
I do like to. It's because I can't read. I like to watch. Okay, so our story. I'm just going to get straight into it and straight to the crime actually, because a lot of it is about what happens after the initial crime.
Boom, let's go.
And I don't normally have cause to do that, but this story is the kidnapping of a young girl, and her name is Jaycee Dugard, and her middle name is Lee. So I think it's
Jaycee Lee.
She could have gone to Jaycee. We didn't have any Jaycees, but it's certainly a very common middle name that was in my school. That's for sure. So Jaycee Lee Dugard, and on June 10 in 1991, in Myers, California, which is also, I understand, referenced as South Lake Tahoe. So you'll have heard of Lake Tahoe, but South Lake Tahoe is a place. Jaycee Dugard had set off for school one morning and it was obviously summer there, and she had a cute little pink outfit on, and as she was walking up her street to join the road, which was going to be where she collected the bus, so it wasn't particularly built up, a grey sedan pulled up in front of her. They stopped directly like across her, and a gentleman put a taser out and tasered her.
What?
At which point they grabbed her. It was a couple. They put her in their car and drove off. This was seen by a number of people. One of those one of those persons, was actually her stepfather. So her stepfather saw it. He called. That was say 000. That wouldn't have helped you much.
911.
He was about to call 911 straight away, and was able to report that he'd seen a man and a woman do a U-turn near a bus stop where he could see and come back, and they had grabbed Jaycee and put her in the car. He also was able to say that it was a grey sedan, and he did quote a make.
Rego number?
No, didn't have a rego number. He grabbed a bike and he tried to like chase after them. I don't know how he did all of that at the same time, but he saw her being taken. Other school children, not a lot, but a few other school children also saw this happen. So it was, whilst it was somewhat isolated, the kids were about, totally.
Yeah, brazen, yeah.
But I dare say you can't argue much with a taser, right?
No.
Oh, no, she can't. But it's just how bolshy that is.
Oh, I know, it's totally bolshy. Oh, I could just hear, that was like, I was just like, bolshy, and it was like,
it's my crickets. Sorry. We all heard crickets on that one.
We're all lost for words, yeah.
So the mother had left for work, and Jaycee, wearing her favourite all-pink outfit, as she walked up the hill against traffic to catch a school bus, is snatched by this couple. The driver is a man by the name of Philip Garrido, and he and his wife Nancy simply rolled down the window, tased Dugard unconscious with the stun gun before abducting her. That's how quick it was. They just and she was in.
I reckon that's not random.
The wife dragged her into the car, where they removed her clothing, leaving only a small butterfly-shaped ring on her finger. That was all she had that would be what she had.
I must say, if they're going to leave a ring on her, that's a very good place to leave
I suspect they missed it. The wife covered Dugard with a blanket. I kept calling her Dugard. Would it be easier if I called her Jaycee? Yeah.
JCL?
Yeah. Nancy covered Jaycee with a blanket and held her down as the girl drifted in and out of consciousness for the 3-hour drive to where they lived.
What?
Yep.
Joking.
Someone's paid them off. This is not right. You don't drive 3 hours to
find some child.
Steal someone.
Well, maybe you do. The girl's drifting in and out of consciousness as they approach their property, which is 120 miles away, and it's just outside San Francisco in a place called Antioch. The only thing that she remembers hearing was the man in the front saying, because the wife was in the back with her holding her down, was at one point he said that he couldn't believe how easy it was. She remembers them saying that. They were shocked at how simple it had been and how efficient the tase had been, how quickly it all happened. I don't think that they realised it would be that simple or that easy.
Wow.
And as I said, so her stepfather had witnessed the abduction of his stepdaughter from within sight of their home. He saw 2 people in a mid-sized grey car, possibly a Mercury Monarch, make a U-turn at the school bus stop where Dugard was waiting, and a woman facing Dugard, forcing her into the car, He chased them on the bicycle but was unable to overtake the vehicle. Some of her classmates also saw the abduction. Initial suspects included the stepfather, but also Jaycee's natural father, although he didn't actually know she existed. So the parents...
So unlikely. Hang on.
So
I've abducted a daughter I didn't know existed.
I suspect that but anyway, that was a very short-lived proposition. The stepfather did a number of polygraph tests and he cleared them all. So it wasn't clear, but it was, they were the ones who'd called immediately and said she'd gone, whatever else. So there was an immediate search effort, and within hours of her disappearance, local and national media converged on South Lake Tahoe to cover the story. There were dozens of local volunteers, and she was the prettiest blonde 11-year-old girl. I mean, it reminds me of a story that I can't remember. The girl was Sam, the girl in Sydney that was always, they showed her that she was abducted. And it's like this, beautiful, really pretty little girl. And there was lots of footage of her as a young girl smiling, eating cereal at the breakfast table, just interacting with people, dressed up for fancy dress. Just a really sweet, normal 11-year-old girl who just happened to be really very pretty. So the national media really got hold of it. It was a great story to start with. People were like really trying to help. There were volunteers coming from every direction, and the search effort was, extensive to start with. Since Dugard's favourite colour was pink, the town was blanketed in pink ribbons as a constant reminder of her disappearance and as a demonstration of support for her family by the community. And that continues whilst she is missing. The mum founded a group called Jaycee's Hope, which directed the volunteer and fundraising efforts, because after, I guess the initial weeks and then months start to pass, they don't know where Jaycee is and interest starts to wane. So she's then trying to, elevate any promotion of this that she can.
But also with the abduction of children, isn't there some statistic that says at some point, like within a very short period of time, like 24 or 48 hours, the assumption is that they're dead?
Yeah,
48.
Yeah.
That assumption was tested here recently with that little girl, Cleo, who was taken. And of course, that was
that was
unbelievable.
amazing.
That was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wasn't it like 18 days or 19 days that she was gone? I can't remember, but because it was all of about 3 months ago. I can't remember.
Yeah. Who can
remember that far back? But that's exactly right. In those early days, people were quoting that constantly, and it is true. I think that there's a window, and and there's TV programs about it now where it's got like a countdown where they show how many hours and minutes they're into each thing before it's a critical time path. So where is Jaycee? Where has she ended up? Jaycee
Antioch
is in Antioch, and she has arrived at the Garrido's home, which from the outset looks like a small grey, I guess you'd call it bungalow in Australia. I think you call it bungalow there, like one story, very modest, very unremarkable house. And where she has been taken is into the backyard. Because behind the house, what Philip and Nancy have created is kind of like a false back to the back of their property, where there's a fence, but then beyond it, they had created a sort of it becomes a bit of a compound. But to start with, there was a music studio there that was soundproofed. So it was, but when I say music studio, it was like a shed. It was very, very basic. Don't be getting any ideas as to anything
Like
grand. It was just a rundown shed that he'd used to record music, but it was soundproof. Yes.
Yeah.
And it was well hidden. There were trees around it. It was away from view. It wasn't like there were other properties looking in on it. So it was quite secluded in that respect. Although from the front of the street, you would not have known it was there. And it appeared that there was just a house, sort of, as I said, like a shortened backyard. Could you imagine that? So I guess if you didn't really know a great deal about the property, you might think that was the end of it. It wasn't like totally sealed off. You could still enter it and that, but it wasn't like part of the main backyard, if you get my gist.
It's not quite like where I live now, but I live in a bungalow at the back of Mum's house.
Yes.
And there's a big fence, so you wouldn't know that this structure is here.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, it's possibly a bit like that. So when she arrived, she was still covered with a blanket, and they take her into this room, this music room, this shed, and it was just dilapidated, I can't remember, run down, quite gross, and they take her in there, and upon arriving, they handcuff her and leave her naked in the shed with a door that Garrido will bolt shut, and he warns her that he has trained Doberman pincers outside the shed that would attack her if she tried to escape. This stuff's quite confronting. There's not a lot of detail, but I just wanted to sort of give you a bit of a warning before I go into it, because it's kind of what he does to her, and it's not pleasant.
Can you talk through this in Namibian so I can understand?
If I could speak any other language. Right after the abduction, Garrido forced Dugard into a shower with him, which was the first time she'd ever been exposed to an unclothed man. During her first week in captivity, Dugard remained in handcuffs. Her only human contact was with him, who sometimes brought her fast food and talked to her. He provided a bucket for her to use to relieve herself. However, a week after the kidnapping, Garrido raped the still handcuffed Dugard for the first time. He continued to rape her frequently, doing so at least once a year for the first 3 years of her captivity.
What?
And I've heard elsewhere, I've seen her interviewed, and she, at this age, at 11, in 1991, she thought sex was when Ken and Barbie were sat next to or lied next to each other in a bed, which is perfectly understandable at that age and in that era, certainly. So she said that she knew that it was evil, and she knew that it was
Can
wrong.
we jump to sentencing? I've already got something in mind.
This is how we can shorten them, hey?
Yeah, God.
He gave her a television, but she was not allowed to watch the news, and I suspect it was still because she was handcuffed so often that it's not like she could get up and change, and he'd have it on the Home Shopping Network. So she had no idea that it was still being publicised that they were looking for her in any of those early
Cruel
years.
and unusual torture.
Yes.
To be made to watch the Home Shopping Network all the time.
But she said she remembered things like she remembered them talking about jewellery and like the strange memories that she had. But she was basically kept in there in the dark, and there was a window that had like a bars on the other side, but he had towels up in there so she couldn't see out. So she really was inside, hidden up.
Home Shopping Networks now make me think of Bridget Jones's Diary.
Yes.
You know how the mother has
The mum,
an affair with the
That's
man
right.
who turns redder and redder, and it's all a bit bizarre. And here is the rings from the princess, her royal highness.
Oh, God, your memory's so good, but yes.
I've seen it about 100 times, but yeah. Have it off. Do you remember when the mum's doing the demonstration about the eggs? Have it off.
Oh,
anyway,
good.
sorry.
No
so
worries.
Inappropriate.
No worries at all. Almost a month and a half after the kidnapping, by Jaycee's recollection, Garrido moved her to a larger room next door where she was handcuffed to a bed. He explained that the demon angels let him take her and that she would help him with his sexual problems because society had ignored him. He went on methamphetamine binges he called runs, during which he would make Jaycee put on makeup and dress her up to spend time with her while cutting out figures for pornographic magazines.
During which he had the runs. Because from everything I know about methamphetamine...
I know nothing about
methamphetamine. With the Betty Crocker frosting.
Remember the Betty Crocker one? Well, I've heard other stories about... Apparently methamphetamine gives you diarrhea. So maybe he called it runs because that's what happened.
Yeah.
He made her listen out for voices he said he could hear from the walls and often professed a belief that he was the chosen servant of God. These binges would end with Garrido sobbing and apologising to Jaycee, alternating with threats to sell her to people who would put her in a cage. Can you even imagine?
He's saying he's the chosen servant of God.
Oh, he's so fucked up. Forgive me.
Because God has lots of servants.
Please just don't.
I don't need to. He's just
deluded.
Correct.
He's a madman.
Crazy, awful individual who has just decided to victim. And are we going to get on to the wife yet?
We're about to.
Yeah, I know.
7 months in. 7 months in,
Mm-hmm.
she was introduced. So she hadn't seen Nancy for the first 7 months.
Oh.
Because I think that was about him and him trying to work through his sexual problems. And what is interesting about all of this is the role that Nancy played, because I've read in a number of places in the last couple of hours, or whatever it is, because I've been working on it that long. It's not over the last 6 months.
In the last 24 hours.
Yeah, on my cocaine
I was
binge.
cramming. I was cramming on speed, yeah.
On my cocaine run.
Yes, they thought that the prosecutors thought that perhaps she had been instrumental in looking for a girl for him as a kind, and some kind of, to make herself a hero in his eyes and to help him and, to make her look better. So that's, she plays a big role.
How do these people meet? Because it always makes me think
we'll
of
get
that
there.
Pina Colada song.
Wait till you hear it.
Pina Colada.
That song is disturbing to me. Am I the only person who finds that disturbing?
What's disturbing about it?
Two people go out to have an affair, and this, oh, how funny. We met each other. Oh, we must be dead. What the fuck? You go out seeking to have an affair.
I didn't know that was what that song was about, I must declare.
No, what?
Hang on, what is it?
Yeah, it's about one guy who puts an ad in the classifieds to say.
Yeah.
How do you know? Does it say it in the song? Forgive me.
How do you not know this?
I probably only know the chorus.
How do I know this? It's literally the lyrics of the song. He says, we were a bit stale.
Yeah. Oh!
A bit stale. So then I put an ad in the paper.
Lovely lady.
Someone else answers it.
Yeah.
And it was my own lovely lady. Oh, what a coinky-dink. Because they both like pina coladas. So apparently they both wanted something else from one another, couldn't discuss it with one another. and therefore went out to have an adulterous affair
With each
and
other.
then turned out to meet each other and go,
And so
isn't that funny?
Yeah, so the ad went, if you like pina coladas and getting caught in the rain,
Yes.
you're the lady I've looked for, write to me
I
and
didn't
escape.
know you liked that. That's terrible.
She answers it,
It's
and
so
it's
disturbing.
I feel very sheltered. I didn't know that. I mean, obviously I know the song, but I've never really listened to it.
it's didn't you?
No.
Yeah,
It's
right.
so wrong.
It's not.
It feels like it's part of one of our stories. I'm a bit embarrassed. You can tell I've gone very
Who
quiet.
listens to lyrics?
But so that's how I wonder. When I think about how these people meet, did one of them
Well, I
put
shall
an
go
ad
on
in
to
the
that.
paper?
Do you like tasering children
Yeah, that's right.
and putting them in a cage?
You're the lady I've looked for. Write to me and escape.
Oh no, we've got another one.
Awful.
We're going to have to
Everything
release
is a
an
musical
album.
interlude with us. Everything is a musical
We are going to have an album. How many tracks do you reckon we've got? There's our extra content.
List.
Yes. We've got Meatloaf. We've got Khalees.
Yeah.
Who else have we got?
Escape.
Yes,
I
now.
did
Quincy
multiple
Jones on the
musicals.
phone.
I did Swanny Todd the
You're
other
Yes,
Nothing.
day.
Sweetie Todd, yes.
My anaconda don't
What?
want.
None of this has got fun.
Tea cakes, huh?
Tea cakes,
And then we got
that's
to
it.
pina colada. Anyway, but yes, I agree with you. How do these people meet? How do you
Glad
hook up
you
with
asked.
someone and say our relation, or not even just hook up?
well,
You
look,
might- that might have been.
Give me
you
a
wanna
moment.
do,
might have been.
Because there's a
honey?
story there, but I need to get you to that point.
Okay.
And it is
okay,
important.
Sorry.
So let me
Okay,
just
okay,
finish
okay.
off this little bit, and then I'll tell you the backstory. Okay, so first of all, let's just finish where we're at, which is that at 7 months in, Garrido introduces his wife Nancy to Jaycee. She brings the child a stuffed animal and chocolate milk and engage in the same
Well, she says,
tearful apologies.
Did I meet you 7 months ago when we tasered you and
Yeah.
I covered you in a blanket and popped you in the car and stripped you of your clothes?
You had me at tasering.
Introduces you.
Yeah.
Oh
You made me
God.
sick.
Sorry. That might have been your turn of phrase, Carla. But anyway, it's
This
just
will lead us
disgusting.
nicely into where we want to get to. Right.
Okay.
So, though Jaycee craved the woman's approval at the time, she stated that Nancy was just as manipulative as Garrido. She relayed that Nancy alternated between motherly concern and coldness and cruelty, which I don't surprises any of us, expressing her jealousy of Jaycee, whom she regarded as the one to blame for her predicament.
Because she's manipulative.
Because you made me
As a-
tase you and you made me
11-year-old.
kidnap you, yeah.
Yeah, an innocent 11-year-old.
This sentence may be of interest to everybody. When Garrido, Philip, was returned to prison for failing a drug test, Nancy replaced her husband as Jaycee's jailer. Do we understand what I've just said?
Oh my lord.
Oh,
Yep.
no.
Of course she did. Okay.
Well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to say, "Oh, by the way, we've got this kid here."
Yeah. No, darling, I've got this. I've got
Should
this
we do
here,
that?
darling. I've got it.
Yeah,
I've
got your back.
I've got Jaycee here. It's all under control. You go back to that was important.
She'll
Back
be
to
here
jail.
waiting when you come back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so let me introduce you to Philip Garrido. So he was born in 1951 in Pittsburgh, and by all accounts, having seen his father be interviewed, he was, perfectly normal. There was no real issue in his childhood. However, he did have a car accident on a motorcycle. I think he had a car accident.
Ouch.
He had an
A
accident.
car smacked into
Yes,
his motorcycle.
correct. Yes, as a teenager, and as a result of that, he said that he was never quite the same again, and he did start using drugs quite heavily, particularly LSD.
So did he have an acquired brain injury?
Well, I don't know if he does. They can't prove that, but it was a case of he certainly started doing a lot of drugs, and a lot of LSD. So, well, that's what his father said. So there's nothing else to sort of suggest that. That was just an interview that I saw with his father. However, in 1972, Philip was arrested and charged for repeatedly raping a 14-year-old girl.
What?
Yeah.
He's got priors.
Uh-huh. So he had drugged her and then raped her. However, she refused to testify. So that was the end of that.
Brushed under the
That's
carpet.
all I can find on that. It's just that she chose not to testify. So what I would be, if I had spent 6 months on this versus 24 hours, I would be really interested to know when this all came out with Jaycee, where this woman was, what her view on it was, but I have there's no names, there's nothing, no detail. So then that was 1972. In 1973, he marries a classmate he'd gone to school with. She comes forward and says that she suffered domestic abuse and that when she said she was going to leave him, he kidnapped her. And that's all the information I
what?
can find on that. In 1976.
And you wonder why women are angry. Anyway.
So remember
Okay.
where our story starts in 1991 with Jaycee
Scary.
being kidnapped. So we're back in 1976, so it's quite some time before. In 1976, he kidnaps a woman and he takes her from California into Reno, Nevada, where he has what's it called? What do you call those small storage sheds where they're all of them packed together? People use them.
Like a lockup?
Yes, lock-up storage, but, you pay for them, so they're
yeah.
all, indiscriminate from the outside. Anyway, a police officer sees a car outside one and light sort of emanating from one of the garage doors, and he goes over and repeatedly knocks on the door, and finally someone opens up the door and it's Philip down there, and then the woman runs out saying, she was being raped by him. So he actually gets caught there and then. But
let me guess, everyone refused to testify, so nothing happened.
No.
Oh.
He actually...
Sorry, can I just check, because I've lost all sense of
Yes.
time in this
Yep.
story. Is this before or after he's abducted?
This is all before. Jaycee.
Oh my God,
So the timeline's important.
Sorry, who's Nancy?
Nancy's
the wife?
the wife.
Sorry,
We're about to meet Nancy.
Forget her.
Yep.
She didn't get abducted.
No, she
That
didn't.
wasn't her that
dickhead.
ran
No.
out of this lock-up storage, by the way.
So he has a complete sheet on
Yeah.
Correct.
attacking girls and women.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Established.
He does face trial and he is sentenced to 50 years in prison. So that is in 1976. So how do we go from 1976, getting caught doing that, to being able to kidnap Jaycee in 1991? There's not many years in there, is there? There's not 50 years.
He was a role model. He
Another
was very
one.
good in prison.
Correct.
Yeah, another one. There's this massive disconnect between what a person is sentenced to or what a person receives based on their behaviour once they're in prison.
Yeah.
And the world of prison is entirely different to the world of open society because, for one, if you're a rapist, there aren't that many young girls and women around for you to rape in prison.
No.
So, of course, you're not out
Immediately
raping all the time.
reformed.
Well, exactly.
Oh my God.
Clearly, well, they didn't rape anyone while they were here. Well, because they friggin' didn't, because they liked the
Because
vajayjay.
there's none.
And there's none of that around. That's right. Oh,
Okay.
I
know, it's infuriating, isn't it?
You were right when you started this and said you're going to get angry.
Oh, wait.
You were right.
This is only a tip of the iceberg. In a 1976 court-ordered psychiatric evaluation, Garrido was diagnosed as a sexual deviant and chronic drug abuser. The drug use was responsible, in part, for his mixed and multiple sex deviation. They also thought that he suffered from anxiety, depression, and personality disorder. He was convicted on March 9, 1977, and began serving a 50-year federal sentence at Leavenworth Penitentiary in Kansas. What do you think he got up to when he was in jail? Guess who he met?
Nancy.
Well,
Nancy was the cleaner.
Nope.
No.
At Leavenworth,
The
Garrido met
psychiatrist.
Nancy.
Was she a prison guard?
Nope.
Oh, thank God.
An 11-year-old girl.
She was visiting. Garrido met Nancy.
She was
Boccanegra,
visiting.
the secondary offender.
What have they got, a
independent.
pub there?
She was visiting her uncle, another prisoner. In October of 81, so remember they're meeting sometime in probably 77, 78, yep. In 81, they were married at the prison.
Okay, there is something wrong with people who marry prisoners. There are women who write to them and they love them. Like what's his name? Making a Murderer, Avery.
I haven't said
Well,
that.
John Avery.
Stephen Avery? Anyway, the guy...
Gary
Avery.
Gary Avery.
I think it's Stephen Avery.
our go-to name for everything.
But and even Tiger King, there are people who go to jail, get a bit of infamy. They just get these letters, and they get these people who are obsessed with them, and they form these weird relationships with them, and they marry them.
Are they like people who have a fascination with crime and so do podcasts
No,
about
because
it?
are you going to write to a criminal?
Asking for a friend.
Well, in my opinion, no.
If you're Nancy and you're sitting at home bored one morning eating too many chips in your slippers and baggy trackies, and you go, what I really need in my life is a pedophile rapist, where am I going to find one of them? I know. I'll go to prison because that's where they all hang out. Like, she's a sharp one, isn't she?
Well, she knows her uncle's there, so she's already got in.
Yeah, I know where to find them. I know where to get me one of them.
Maybe
Jesus.
because her uncle's there, she's desensitized to the reality of the type of people who are there.
Do you want to know what
That's
she
the
does for
best
an
I can say
occupation?
for her right now.
What does
She's
she
a
do as an
psychologist.
occupation?
No, but she is a nursing aide and a physical therapy aide, so she's helping people. Like,
Yes,
she's
she's
a
helping
nurse.
people.
How
She's
fucked
all
up.
about providing love and care
Mm.
and support and seeing that not everyone, has those supports and therefore she needs to be there for them. I'm just surmising.
I could almost vomit now, and I haven't even had much to drink.
That's all right.
This is a...
Shall I keep
Apparently,
going?
buckle up, or at least
Okay, this is.
at least bucket
Yeah,
up
yeah.
because Carla's
Hear
got
me
more
out
to-
on the
The
next
shit's
bit.
about to get
The shit
stormy.
is about to hit the fan. You're not going to be happy with the next bit. So they've met. They've got married in 81. In January of 1988, so 7 years later, Garrido was released from Leavenworth to Nevada State Prison. This is important, where he served 7 months of a 5 years to life Nevada sentence. 5 years to
Yeah,
life
we've done
becomes
this before,
7
but I don't
months.
understand how 5 years to life. Like, that is a very big bracket.
We have discussed this before.
I don't
and I'm
get it.
so confused by
I don't
it.
understand it. I just
So he went into Leavenworth with 50 years.
correct.
Yeah, but is that in
And then
Kansas?
he's moved state.
Yeah, that's gone
He's
from
moved state, so the laws are different
Yes.
in
So
that
now
state,
it's
so they
5
reduce the
5 to
sentence.
life, and he's only had to
Is-
serve 7 months. So in total,
Is that seriously what happened? When
Yeah.
they move him from one prison in one state to another,
Yeah.
they halve,
I don't know what they've
or
done.
give him 10% of his sentence.
I don't know. I don't know
That's
how. I don't
wrong.
understand how it works, and I don't think we're going to. If my math is correct, for kidnapping and for raping a woman for 5.5 hours, where he was caught by the police,
Sorry,
he served a
the
total.
woman... You
Like,
didn't
You
say
didn't
that
say
earlier.
that earlier.
I just had a... What?
What did you think?
I
It was
thought
a
she
in the
might have
lockup
even
who was
got
allegedly
away with
5.5
being
hours.
rescued, was raped for 5.5
was.
hours before the person knocked on the door and got her out.
Cops
before
got
the
there.
police. Yeah, because when the police arrived and something didn't look quite right, and they opened up the garage, she'd been in there being raped for 5.5 hours and had been kidnapped from California and taken to Nevada.
Right.
So that's what he got for that. So taken from California to Nevada, raped for 5.5 hours, got caught. Because do you think that was going to have a happy ending? I wouldn't have thought so, but anyway,
Well,
the happy ending was the
oh,
police
don't.
found her.
He was happy. He was
She was
open.
very lucky.
I don't want to
very
jump
lucky.
forward, but does he murder any of his victims?
Well, actually, I don't know. In this story, no, he doesn't murder anybody. But there are a number of outstanding sort of
Questions.
situations where they don't know
Right.
if he has had
Yeah,
involvement.
okay,
but
all
I
right.
can't speak to
Okay,
that.
fair enough.
So we're now about to leave prison in Nevada. So this is important because this sets us up for the rest of the story, really. He was transferred to federal parole authorities in Contra Costa County, California. So again, he's gone from jail in Kansas, jail in Nevada, and now he's no longer in jail, but he has a parole officer who will be looking after him in California. And Garrido and his wife moved to the city of Antioch, which is where we find them in our happy story, where they lived in the home of his elderly mother who suffered from dementia. So it was her home. As a
So
parolee...
she knew that he was a rapist.
Yeah. And your point is, you know what?
Yeah, no.
Love
I'm
is
just wondering.
love.
What are you
Yeah,
saying?
that's right. Why so
Her job
judgmental?
was to save him, and then this
Yeah.
And then
I'm a
this
carer.
terrible,
I do.
sexy 11-year-old.
I'm going to physio the fuck out of him till
Yeah,
he's
but then
better.
this sexy 11-year-old came along and
Oh,
ruined everything for her. It was all her fault.
Oh, here comes that vomiting feeling again.
Ugh.
I'd lost that vomiting feeling.
Hot burp.
Whoa, that vomiting
No amount of
feeling.
ginger beer is going to make me feel less nauseous for the story. But anyway.
Absolutely.
Oh,
So as a
goodness.
parolee, and remember he'll be on a sex offenders list because of what he's done, he wore a GPS-enabled ankle bracelet and was regularly visited by parole officers, local sheriffs, deputies, and federal agents.
That's a lot of people.
It's a rather lot of people, isn't it, Clarky?
Well, he's a very
I
bad
should
think
have
boy.
been
so.
visited by a fucking hitman. But anyway.
By the
Let's
Grim Reaper.
go back to the backyard, okay? So now I've set
No.
the scene.
Actually, I'm not
We
okay
have
with
to.
that.
No,
Can we
it
skip
gets quite
that?
interesting at this point.
Okay.
So we know that
Oh, she's holding us to point. Okay.
Yeah, we know Philip's background. We know Philip has been in prison previously for kidnap and rape. We know that he met his wife in prison. We know that he served a very small portion of a very large sentence, and he's now living in California with Nancy in this home in Antioch. They have snatched young Jaycee, and she is now, captive of theirs in their backyard. So I've explained to you sort of up to the point where Nancy got involved. After almost 3 years into her captivity, the Garridos began to allow Jaycee freedom from her handcuffs for periods of time, though they kept her locked in the bolted room. On Easter Sunday of 94, I don't know how they know that, they gave her cooked food for the first time.
What's she been eating for until
What?
Well, I don't know. Remember they did say fast food,
Fast
I
food.
don't know. That's cooked, so I don't quite know what that means. It was
Or
a
like
day
a home
prepared.
cooked meal kind of thing.
Dugard was
so
age
so
13
that was
at the
important
time.
because they started to treat her like a person?
Possibly the reason they started to treat her as a person was the couple informed Jaycee that they believed that she was pregnant.
She's pregnant. I knew that was
She was
coming.
13 at the time and had learned the link between sex and pregnancy from television.
From the shopping
Well,
network.
I don't know how that works. I'm assuming they changed channels.
Fucking hell, what are they selling on the shopping network?
This
Absolutely.
beautiful ring from Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of blah blah. Anyway. And by the way, you're
Oh,
pregnant,
gosh.
Jaycee, with lapis lazuli.
Well done, you're very good. She watched television programs on childbirth in preparation for the birth of her first daughter, which occurred.
Don't
have
use
it
Which
that.
occurred-
No.
So when she was 14, she had a little girl. After the birth of her first daughter, Garrido raped Jaycee less frequently, though he would nonetheless do so when he had taken drugs. The last time Garrido raped Jaycee was the day her second daughter was conceived.
Jesus.
Her second daughter was born when she was 17.
Oh
Jaycee
my God,
took
so she's
care
been
of
there
her daughters
6 years.
at this
Yeah.
point. Jaycee took care of her daughters using information learned from the television
Network.
and worked to protect
From
them
the,
from him.
from the shopping network.
The
She
shopping
was
Yeah.
network.
able to,
dedicated-
she was able to educate
a
them
network.
about lapis lazuli.
Do you know there's like there's a channel for like kidnappees? What do you call it? Captives.
Captives. Oh,
Yeah.
God.
It's like what to do if you find
A
yourself
home decorating show.
How to spruce up.
DIY. How to spruce up your
Prison,
shed, your bolt room. Yeah.
Sarah, we've got Sarah Beanie coming in to show
Spark
food.
joy. Spark joy.
Sarah Bean, I haven't heard that ever.
You know,
Spark joy.
you really need to declutter that room
We are desperately trying to make this funny.
because there's nothing
It's
funny about it. Yeah.
awful.
Anyway.
Jaycee coped with her continued captivity by planting flowers in the garden. So basically what
So
they
she's
did was
allowed out now.
a little bit as the girls start to, as the little
As the
girls, as
children
the babies
grow,
become
yeah.
children, there does start to be this level of, I don't know, trust, I guess, to a certain extent. But what he's done is he's really made it a true compound. So from above, if you can imagine, there's sort of two sheds. There's a makeshift sort of outhouse where he's got like a outside shower and toilet. And he has put up even like really huge fences all around, so people can't see in. It's trees, and again from the front, it looks like it's possibly the block behind. You wouldn't necessarily know that's associated with it, but
Yeah.
certainly on the land. And if you went into the backyard, you'd say, "Oh, who's there?" or "What's that?" But that just didn't seem to happen.
Yeah, but
What was I
like
saying?
you
So
wouldn't
that-
expect it to happen. Like if they're not inviting people around to say, "Look at our prisoners," like,
Yes,
and
but
come over
they
for
start
tea.
to. Well, it starts to.
God.
There are. I'm going to get onto that where they do start to have some contact with the outside world. Jaycee starts homeschooling the girls, but at one point, Garrido informed Jaycee that to pacify his wife, that she and her daughters were to address Nancy as their mother, and that she was to teach her daughters that she was actually their older sister. So Nancy is mummy to all three of them. Yeah, it's just that Jaycee's the older sister.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See her next Tuesday.
When Jaycee and her daughters were eventually allowed to come into contact with other people, this fiction was continued. So it wasn't a lot of contact, but I find this to be so hard to get my head around. He had a job, right? And like we've all worked in advertising. Garrido operated a print shop where Jaycee acted as the graphic artist. This came so left of field for me. I just find this remarkable. So I couldn't find this reference anywhere
In
else.
the office.
This is what I don't understand. I think she's actually at home, working from home, I think. A customer of
She's
Garrido's...
the original COVID girl.
Absolutely. A
Yeah.
customer of Garrido's printing
Gosh.
business claimed that he met and spoke by telephone with Jaycee and that she did excellent work. During this time, Jaycee had access to the business phone and an email account. Another customer indicated that she
911,
never
love.
hinted to him.
They don't talk about that on the shopping network.
Well, they're just so threatened, I think. And it's that,
Well,
probably
I
that
just
Stockholm
think, yeah,
syndrome
and
as well.
yeah, exactly. You're so brainwashed into
Yeah.
going, this is where I'm at.
And threatened you're going to end up in a cage and goodness
they'll
knows
take
what
my
else. Or the girls or the
children,
children.
or-
For sure
yeah.
about the children.
Yeah.
Witnesses stated Jaycee was seen in the Garrido household and sometimes answered the front door to talk to him, but never stated there was a problem or attempted to leave. It's funny because I actually saw someone talking to, the people that were affected, and apparently the kids in the neighbourhood called him Creepy Phil. Not terribly imaginative, but Creepy Phil. If anyone had have ever looked, it says here, the private area of the backyard included the sheds, which I've told you about, so you could actually call it a compound as such. It had the recording studio, which I told you she first went into, which was just basically a soundproof room, because he'd been singing religious-themed and romantic country songs in there. Two
That's too
homemade
much. There's
tents,
another crime
and what was
right
described
there.
as the camp-style shower and toilet. The area was surrounded by tall trees and a 6-foot-high fence. An entrance to the secondary backyard, so this is where they are, this secondary backyard, was covered by trees and a tarpaulin. Privacy was enhanced by tents and outbuildings. Electricity was supplied by extension cords. The enclosure also housed a car that matched the description of the one used in the abduction. It was all there. No one ever
But no one
bothered
ever
to look.
saw it.
Because no one bothered to look.
Well,
Schmitty, we'll get to that. Do you have any idea how many times the man was on parole? He was a sex offender. They never went into the
all right.
backyard.
The authorities should have looked.
Correct.
Yeah. But I'm
Yes.
just saying the neighbours and other people who
They did, and I'll get on missed rescue opportunities, which
who
we'll get
may
on
not
to
have.
now.
Oh, okay.
It beggars belief when you see it's just all there. It's just so obvious, and a lot of it, I guess, is what I've seen, which is an aerial view.
Yeah.
Which, of course, it's all laid out. You can see there's something going on because you can see how it's all interconnected, so you don't get any visibility. So, although, like we're saying in one breath, oh, the girls are doing gardening. When you see them, they had never really seen the sun. They'd never been outside as
Because
such.
it's
And
really
this-
covered. Yeah.
Correct. So law enforcement officers visited at least, I've read some of the day, there were 60 different visits to the house over the years.
And no one went in the backyard.
Do you know why it was so many?
So many reports.
Oh, go
No,
on.
because it was
why?
18 years.
18
years
I was
18
horrified at
years.
6. They were there for
I know.
18 years.
18 years. And I'll tell you where the missed opportunities were, and then I'll tell you how they came to be found. But whilst they were there, he was being visited. And there's footage where she has actually, the wife has filmed, this must be very early on. I think this is just after Jaycee has been abducted. The parole officer comes into the house, and it's like a modern day, when the police officer has the camera on him, but it's actually the opposite. It's Nancy. And she is heckling the parole officer and belittling and just, this is ridiculous, all that, because I've kind of, ferrying him to the rooms, and he's hassled and harassed sort of by them. And as someone says, if someone's pushing that hard, you should be pushing back the other way. But it gets to a point where they're just going, well, what's wrong? What have we done? And, why is this door locked? You
Why
can't
are
have
you
that
here?
door
Why are
locked.
you bothering us? You're just harassing us.
And as that you see her, chasing him out the front door, saying, oh, he's just a little man with a big complex, all that kind of little man complex. It's awful. And she's just harassing him. And I think he's just going, whatever, I'm out of here. But at that point, early on,
Jobsworth.
all anybody ever had to do was check the full property, but no one ever did. And they went so many times for different things. Remember, he goes to prison again for drugs. That happens within that 18 years, but no one's actually really, really looking and really doing their job. Do you know what I mean? It's all this kind of...
Jobsworth.
So I'm going to give you a little bit of a rundown now of how these opportunities were missed when law enforcement officers, parole officers, etc., were visiting the home. First of all, police failed to realise, this one's quite a big one. If I worked this out myself from reading a couple of documents, I don't know why they couldn't. Police failed to realise that Jaycee had been kidnapped south of South Lake Tahoe, the same location as Garrido's 1976 kidnapping and rape of Catherine Calloway Hall. So when he took the 25-year-old girl to Nevada, that's where he got her from, South Lake Tahoe.
I think there was a complete lack of
Cross-referencing on a computer system.
computer systems, full stop. our context now, which is everything should be connected. There's lots of cross-referencing. There's lots of computer systems.
Shut
that
up
can
with your
crunch
good
the
points.
data
I
and
want
all
to
the
hear
rest of it.
Carla rip out some more scandal.
All right. Right.
Well, the next one's interesting.
Oh, I'm
because
sorry. I didn't know where we were. That we were there.
go.
Okay, fine. Okay. Just
You
saying.
said it. Shut up.
There is
Back to
defective.
Carla.
100% defective
God, yeah.
detecting here, but also it was an early period.
Well, this next one, that it's contradictory in the sense that one person says it's not the case. But on April 22 in 1992, so that's less than a year after the kidnapping, a man called the Contra Costa County Sheriff's Department, that's the county that they live in, from a gas station less than 2 miles from the Garridos' home, reporting that he saw Jaycee inside the gas station staring intently at a missing child poster of herself.
Yeah,
The
that's
caller-
not okay.
The caller then reported seeing her leave in a large yellow van, possibly a Dodge. An old yellow Dodge van was later recovered from the Garrido property that matched the description of the van given in that call. The license plate was not reported. The caller, the girl, and the van were gone by the time the police arrived. So the police did go. The caller never identified himself and the police did not pursue the matter. However, contradicting this story, Jaycee reported that she'd never left the house from the day she was kidnapped until shortly before her first child was born, which was 94. So it doesn't add up for her.
Okay.
So I don't know. But it does sound like she was... The yellow car sound, or it sounds like at least somebody knew something and was trying to dob them in at the very least.
Yeah,
Do you know what I
exactly.
mean?
So they
Somebody
made
knew
up
something.
that she was there. Yeah.
In June 2002,
That's the
Antioch
shittest
Fire
way of dobbing
Department-
someone in. Don't make up a story.
Like,
Just fucking dob them
exactly.
in. Yeah.
fucking tell them.
Just fucking go to the police and say,
'Cause that
the
just- that didn't
Garridos
work.
down there, they've got a young girl that wasn't there 2 weeks ago.
And
That's
that
not
this
cool.
is what this whole next bit is about.
Yeah.
In June of 2002, the Antioch Fire Department responded to a report of a juvenile with a shoulder injury that occurred in a swimming pool at the Garridos' home. This information was not relayed to the parole officer, which had no record of either a juvenile or a swimming pool at the address. So it's all about what you have on record and what you're allowed to have and what you're allowed to have access to, who's in your home. There's a lot of things that go with being on parole that are not just about, you know, whether you can go here, there, anywhere, and keep yourself out of trouble. They're supposed to know an awful lot about what's going on, and there were things going on that they were totally missing when they were going to visit.
You've looked at the compound and you've looked at aerial photos of the place. Did they have a swimming pool?
There is an empty swimming pool in one photo that I've seen.
Okay.
Yeah, like an above ground, but it was
Okay,
empty,
yeah.
and it was sort of, it sat.
So it could have
Yeah,
been there.
I don't know if it sat
that
within
could have
the-
happened.
now-
That could be
And-
real.
Yes.
Yeah.
There-
Okay.
absolutely,
Carla,
I have seen
do you
the pool.
know,
Yeah.
and you may not, it's okay if you don't, but do you know if the parole officer was made aware of this and just did nothing, or whether they weren't even advised? Like,
He was not.
Yeah,
it wasn't
right.
told him. The information was not
Yeah, right.
relayed to the parole officer. They would have realised that there was. Well, if he had done anything about it, or she had done anything about it, there would be a difference in what they had on record. This is a good one. In 2006, one of the Garridos' neighbours called 911 to inform them that there were tents in the backyard with children living there, and that Garrido was psychotic with sexual addictions. A deputy sheriff spoke with Garrido at the front of the house for about 30 minutes and left, after telling Garrido that
Not good enough.
there would be a code violation if people were living outside on the
oh,
property.
no one
good
wants
enough.
a code violation.
Yeah.
I never know what that
Not
is.
enough.
Is it like a foul in basketball? You get subbed off for 30 seconds?
Code violation, yeah.
It's a fucking code
Yeah.
violation.
We've covered how we got to have 3 young girls living with, well, not 3 young girls anymore, but, you know, Jaycee's a little bit older and her 2 daughters, and living with Philip and Nancy Garrido. But the big question is, how did it come about that these girls and their mother were released? And it starts in August of 2009. And Garrido himself visits the San Francisco office of the FBI, where he leaves a 4-page essay containing his ideas about religion and sexuality, suggesting that he has discovered a solution.
doesn't.
He is absolutely mad. He has discovered a solution to problem behaviours like his past crimes. The essay described how he had cured his deviant behaviour and how that information could be used to assist in curing other sexual predators by controlling human impulses that drive humans to commit dysfunctional acts. So that's on the 24th of August. On the same day...
Hang on, and was Was JC still in captivity at his
Yep,
house
Absolutely.
at this point?
Yep.
So this is how well he's cured himself of his deviant behaviours.
I'm cured by kidnapping a kid and raping her for the last 18 years.
Yep. I don't know if there's no suggestion actually that he had raped his daughters.
No, but he raped
but
JC.
that might be his thinking that he is now all sorted.
Oh right.
Yeah, I think
don't find.
I think
I've
there's
had
something because I didn't rape those girls.
I have no desire to rape my own children.
Well, I don't know if that's actually true, but I haven't read that he did. So let's see.
I also never raped anyone in jail, therefore I'm cured.
Now I don't know if he was actually able to see anyone at the FBI. My assumption is if you turn up there as a lunatic going, "Hey, I would like you to leave an essay with you," I'm not sure that they're all going to be going, "Oh, let me meet with him." So let's assume that no one actually read that document on the day or thought too much about it. Yeah. I'm sorry, she's in a meeting. No, I'm sorry. I bet he didn't have a name of anybody. It was just random. On the same
I'll try
day,
and find somebody.
I mean, he was really going for it. On the same day, he travelled to the University of California's Berkeley campus, so UC Berkeley. But he did it with JC's 2 daughters. He visits the campus seeking permission to hold a special event as part of his God's Desire program. He spoke with special events manager Lisa Campbell.
Fucking hell.
Now, Lisa Campbell is not, there was a word that they used for this, like she's not a true police officer. She does police work, but she's not a I guess, badge carrying.
She's like a
vigilante.
What do they call them in England? PCO or police,
I know what you mean.
community officer or something.
Like I think that's who she is. So she wears a uniform, but she's not actually a police officer per se. She helps with him.
Oh, we call them that in Australia.
CPOs, community police, someone. Yeah.
A Comic-Con police officer?
Yeah.
Now, Lisa,
you're not quite a police officer. You're something like it, but you don't have the same jurisdiction or something.
Victoria has them. I just can't remember what they're called.
What's a bobby? That's actually a policeman, isn't it?
That's an actual policeman
yeah,
in the UK, yeah.
He meets with Lisa Campbell, and Lisa is a bit flabbergasted by his sort of approach, and she said he was just so animated. Totally nutter.
By his complete nuttiness.
Yeah, she said he was just not a well man. And she spied out of her eye, her peripheral vision, these 2 girls.
I spy with my little eye
my peripheral
2
vision,
children that don't belong here.
2 very pale girls outside the door. And she said, who are they? And he says, they're my daughters. And she said, oh, well, we don't come in. This is JC's daughters, who he has taken onto the campus with him into the police department on campus to organise. He wants to be able to hold a meeting for his God Desires program. So Lisa Campbell invites the girls in, and she finds the girls to be very quiet. She said that they were sullen and submissive, and she just didn't feel like something was quite right. So she asked if he would come back the next day, and he, of course, was very happy to do that because he was so keen to get his meeting. And so he left his name in the process, and off he and the 2 girls go, having not had a great deal of interaction, but she said their body language and they just didn't seem like they were of...
She's good.
Typical... You know what? I don't know if she's good or she just cared a bit. So they leave.
She just paid attention.
Absolutely.
That's what I did it.
She paid attention and she acted
just
on
observed
it.
and went...
Yeah.
This
to
ain't
everybody
right.
else. Yeah. Then what she did was she approached a colleague who was an officer called Ali Jacobs, and she spoke to Ali and she said, look, I've organised this other meeting. I would really appreciate a second opinion. Something doesn't feel quite right to me. And she said, okay, well, I can sit on the meeting with you tomorrow. No worries. And she said, let's run his name. So they did. Officer Ali Jacobs.
Triple rapist.
Ran a background check and discovered that Dorito was a registered sex offender on federal parole for kidnapping and rape. So the next day, and I've seen these pair interviewed, they've been on everything. They're like heroes. What they did was they pretended they shared an office. So they tried to make it less like it was like a bit of an inquisition on the girls. But
like one watching the other. Yeah.
So when they walked in, Lisa was focused on arranging the God's Desire program with Philip, whereas the 2 girls sort of sat casually near her desk and she sort of just asked them some questions. And when they arrived, she said, oh, look, we share an office, do your bit. And she just was asking the girls some casual questions. And to Jacobs, they appeared to be pale, as if they had not been exposed to sunlight. and she also felt their behaviour was unusual. Garrido's several parole violations were a basis for an arrest. So Jacobs phoned the parole office to relay her concerns. So she couldn't really do anything there and then. There was nothing that was wrong with what was actually going on, but she thought behind that he would have done the wrong thing based on his parole conditions. And when she got through, she could only leave a voicemail. Upon hearing Jacob's recorded message, 2 parole agents drove to the Garrido's house later that day. Upon arrival, they handcuffed Garrido and searched the house, finding only his wife Nancy, and I think this is hysterical because I'd forgotten all about her and I assumed she was dead, and his elderly mother at the home. So dementia. Been there the whole bloody time.
God, she was like 87, 100 years ago.
I know. So I'm like, oh God, I thought she was long gone. I just didn't think she was pivotal in the story, but oh no, she was there.
She must be like 107.
Oh.
We're 18, 20 years later.
She'd be old. The parole agents then drove them to the parole office. En route, Garrido said that the girls who had accompanied him were the daughters of a relative and that he had permission from their parents to take them there. Although the parole office had previously barred Garrido from associating with minors, and although Berkeley was 40 miles, 64 k's, from the Garrido's Contra Costa residence, 15 miles in excess of the 25-mile, 40k limit, he was allowed to travel from his home without his parole agent's permission. Nothing was done about these violations. After reviewing his file with a supervisor, they drove Garrido home and ordered him to report to the office again the next day to discuss his visit to the UC Berkeley campus and to follow up on the officer's concerns about the 2 girls. Garrido arrived at the parole office in Concord, California on August 26th. So this is 2 days. Remember, on the 24th, he'd been to the FBI and the Berkeley campus. They'd returned to the Berkeley campus on the 25th, and we're now on the 26th. So it happens quite quickly once it starts to happen. Garrido arrived at the parole office with Nancy, the 2 girls, and Jaycee, who was introduced as Alyssa. The parole officer, very wisely, decided to separate Garrido from the women and girls to obtain their identification, maintaining her false identity as, it's actually spelled Alyssa, like Allissa. That's just a bit.
What?
Why? I mean, this is the thing with the names like Alyssa, Alicia.
Like
It's one of those.
Pretty spelling.
Alison.
Jaycee told investigators that the girls were her daughters. Although she indicated that she was aware that Garrido was a convicted sex offender, she stated that he was a changed man, a great person, and was good with her kids. Comments that were echoed by the 2 girls.
Her kids, who were produced by the girl he raped for 18
But the girls
years.
agree, so they're all happy to say that. When pressed for details, they would confirm her identity. Jaycee became extremely defensive and agitated, demanding to know why she was being interrogated, and subsequently stated that she was a battered wife from Minnesota in hiding from her abusive husband.
Jaycee.
The parole officer eventually called the Concord police. Upon the arrival of a police sergeant, by this point, why weren't the police there in the first place? Still all at the parole office. Garrido admitted he had kidnapped and raped Jaycee. Only after this did she properly identify herself as Jaycee Dugard. She hadn't said her name in 18 years because she'd written her name down once when they gave her a kitten and they took away from her, and she was allowed to keep a little journal about the kittens, and she'd written her name, and he said, you can't do that, and ripped it out. And she'd never repeated her own name in all those years, 18 years.
God,
So she'd
imagine
just
being able to remember that.
Exactly. She'd just forgotten who she was.
It's interesting because I will say this, and I've mentioned it before, where this sort of Stockholm syndrome, she kind of refutes that because she says it's an insult to her. She says, the phrase Stockholm syndrome implies that hostages cracked by terror and abuse become affectionate towards their captors. Well, it's really degrading, having my family believe that I was in love with this captor and wanted to stay with him. I mean, that is so far from the truth that it makes me want to throw up. I adapted to survive my circumstances. She repeatedly stated that as a survival mechanism, many victims are forced to sympathise with their captors. Garrido and his wife were placed under arrest. An FBI agent put Jaycee on the telephone with her mother, Terry Probyn.
God.
Could you even imagine?
Could you even, yeah. Exactly.
And I have seen her interviewed, and the mother just was, I don't know, I mean, obviously it had destroyed her life, and she never gave up hope. And there's a really sweet thing that they talk about where they had, as when, Jaycee was younger, they'd always sat on their veranda and looked at the moon. And she said on the occasions when she'd look at the moon, she'd wonder if her mum was thinking of her, if her mum had forgotten about her, if her mum think about her. And she had this little saying that she would say, which was, I see the moon and the moon sees me. God bless the moon and God bless me. And she used to say that to herself. And I think her mum would say it on the other side. And so that they'd often be looking at the moon. And her mum, when she was interviewed at one point, was looking at the moon saying, you know, where are you, Jaycee? When are you going to come home? And it wasn't long before this all happened, like it was in a matter of days or something. What is quite interesting is obviously there were legal proceedings against Philip and Nancy, but also against the state. And the Duggans sued the state of California, and they also attempted to sue the federal government of the United States for when that was like a federal parole situation. They were successful in suing the state of California, and they were granted a $20 million settlement.
What did they sue them for?
Because she should not have been kidnapped and raped by someone who was on parole, because they were not doing their job. Asgarito had been on parole for a 1976 rape at the time of her kidnapping. Dugard sued the state of California, which had taken over the parole supervision from the federal government. Remember when they moved it from Kansas to Nevada to California?
Yeah.
On account of the numerous lapses by law enforcement during instances in which her captivity should have been discovered by them. In July 2010, the state of California approved a $20 million settlement with Dugard to compensate her for various lapses by the Corrections Department that contributed to Dugard's continued captivity, ongoing sexual assault, and mental and or physical abuse. I've seen the mother asked about the money, and she was like, you know, it's neither here nor there really. And she said that nothing has really changed in the system. She said, you know, I still don't know that things like this don't happen. But I did see another interview, and I mentioned at the outset that I had seen an interview with the National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children. And there was some good news in that, in the sense that I think it's now 25 years, or it's a long time since, well, what year was it? 19, how many years is it now? 30 years? 91? Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Since she was kidnapped. But so much has changed in all our world since then that what they find is in 2011, when she, you know, this was all in the news, they said that in the US there was 100 children, basically 100 children, give or take, I'm sure, being abducted a year in the US. But that is a declining number. And the reason that is a declining number, and I mean, obviously that's now 11 years old, that piece of information, is there are so many different things that now play a part in finding a child when they go missing. And the thing that you'll probably notice when you're in the US is when you're on freeways and stuff, we see that Amber Alert. So they can get information out immediately if someone goes missing. This is what we're looking for. So there's a much more united, I don't know if it's state or national, but I've certainly been, you know, in Florida when I've seen things come up. We're looking for this car, we're looking for that child. That process has really helped. But the thing that they said helps the most is actually smartphones, because they can get pictures in front of people in real time. People can take pictures, and all of that kind of stuff is actually helping. And they said that the one thing with all of these type of sexual predators, they really want to stay under the radar. They do not want to be caught. They're not trying to become, they're not the kind of criminals who want to be infamous for what they've done. They are deviants who are trying to do this, you know, in the shadows. It makes their job that much harder. And they said that, you know, there are so many more things that have come into fruition since the time that she was abducted that actually do help children. And this National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children, I think it only just started around the time that she was abducted. They teach children more about being assertive, how to scream, how to kick, how to say, this is not my mother, this is not my father. If there was anything they can do, I don't suppose it's going to help you being tasered, but again, there is much more awareness around this kind of thing that, you know, that sexual predators, we didn't really talk about them the way we do now when we were children, right? Or you'd laugh about it, or they were like perverts, and that was kind of it. Who shall we take to trial? Who angers you the most? Who do you think played the biggest role?
Can I start with one?
Yeah.
I don't want to start with the Nancy and Phil, because
Phil and Nancy. I like it.
Well, it sounds like the Reagans, Ronald and Nancy.
Yeah.
Like, it just sounds a bit too casual. The one I want to know more about is old mate who threatened with the code violation. So someone's complained about children in the backyard and people living in tents, and he went to the front of the house,
Deputy Sheriff,
and had a conversation.
Oh, yes.
And then threatened a code violation and left.
That is the Deputy Sheriff, and I've never heard him speak, but I've seen a sheriff speak a number of times, and I've seen a sheriff interviewed, and it is, you know, a huge embarrassment. But he just waffles when he answers that they just did the wrong thing. Well, it wasn't even under-resourced, just did the wrong thing. So his name was Warren E. Ruff, and he issued an apology to the victims in a news conference. That's the sheriff story. The deputy sheriff was the one who went. And when the sheriff was interviewed, they said, did you talk to him today? Oh, no. And he said, well, you just didn't care. He said, well, no, I wouldn't say they didn't care, but they just didn't follow it up. Didn't care enough. So I don't know what he talked to him for about half an hour out the front of his house. But the code violation here. A deputy sheriff spoke with Garrido at the front of the house for about 30 minutes and left after telling Garrido that there would be a code violation if people were living outside the property. So did he just say, well, are there people there? I don't know. They're not there at the moment.
Yeah.
Can I have a look?
So that's the bit that I kind of go, if anyone hasn't done a good job. So if there's something that has been reported that's happening out the back of the house, as an absolute minimum, you should ask to go and see the back of the house.
Yep.
And if you can't because the person won't let you,
yes,
that right there is an alarm bell to say maybe I should be asking for a warrant here because he's now stopping me. What I need to have comfort that this isn't happening is to just do a 5-minute walk around the house and make sure everything's okay.
What's the problem? Let's have a look. Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. You're
stopping me from doing that, and therefore you are
obstructing justice.
Well, you should then have suspicions raised to go, why would someone who isn't hiding this not want me to come and have a look? He should have, as a deputy particularly, he should have the wherefore art thou? I don't know what the right...
Wherewithal.
That's him. to actually go, I need to go and do this further. I shouldn't just let that one slide. And even on a bad day at 3:00 in the morning when you wake up and have those, how did that day go yesterday?
Might go and check up on that.
Go, shit, I really should do more in that space.
And that's the thing, right? Because it all comes back to sometimes, when these women who were the ones who came forward said it wasn't right, their intuition, they could see something wasn't quite right. So there was a report that was done after they were found looking into the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. And when they were discovered, guess who were the first who would have come out and celebrate the fact that they had been discovered? It was the parole board. They came out like heroes and said, we're so relieved, we're so happy that we've done this. They took the credit.
Wow.
So there's actually a press conference that they held saying, this, and of course, they then had to issue an apology later. So on November 4, 2009, the California Office of the Inspector General issued a report that enumerated lapses by the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation that had contributed to Dugard's continued captivity. The central finding was that Garrido was incorrectly classified as needing only low-level supervision. All other lapses derived from that mistake. In his report, the Inspector General detailed an instance in which a parole agent encountered a 12-year-old girl at the home, right?
What?
Of a sex offender. Yep.
Oh.
But accepted Garrido's explanation that she was his brother's daughter and the agent did nothing to verify it.
Oh.
Despite the fact...
Knowing that he was a sex offender.
Right.
Despite the fact that a call to Garrido's brother verified he did not have children. And I wrote, what? My big underneath that I wrote, what? And I mean,
what?
There's just so
WTF?
many. It's damning. It really is.
Up until then, I'd been trying to understand why the parole board or parole system was at fault, because I could imagine a whole lot of scenarios where you'd go and visit someone's house and you wouldn't notice those things.
Yes.
That is the alarm bell that they should be, God, even if you don't deal with it properly in the moment, reflect and go, what? Hang on, that doesn't add up.
No, and that's
didn't add up at the time, and then we rang up and found out that it really didn't add up, and then we ignored it.
And went, oh, that's all too hard. I can't deal with that today.
Isn't it crazy? It just... Sometimes I read these things or watch these things and watching these people being interviewed, and...
Do you think it's just, impossible for some people to believe that that kind of heinous behaviour is happening?
Not if they're a parole officer or in the criminal justice system at all. For Joe Bloggs down the street, maybe. But that's what these guys... That's their job, right? That's their job. That's where this is different to other stuff where we go, oh, my God, how can people be so foolish or stupid? That's not what's happening here. This is their job.
Yeah,
that's where
this
is where they're supposed to know. Yeah, they're supposed to.
We've talked about defective detectives. We've talked about lots of this in the past, but we haven't actually talked about someone whose job it is to ensure that people who have been released and they're in, community are living the lives that they're allowed to, or that they've been given the freedom to.
It's acceptable. Or
yes.
Whatever,
And then, that's their job to make sure that they are living within those very strict requirements
boundaries,
so they can be allowed out, and that's the price they pay to have their freedom. In the document, right? Remember, this is the document of the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. There were 2 photos in there. That one was a graph, and one was a photograph. One was an image of the compound and the house from above, and it had a red dot for every time he had his ankle bracelet on, so they could see where he was because it tracked him.
Travelled to and back.
And where do you reckon he was? He wasn't in the house. He
Back
spent
in the
most of the
shed.
time in the back of the shed. Yeah, you could see so there was like an aerial view of the house with red dots all over the back part. And another one was a table, actually, that had every visit that they'd ever been made by a parole officer. There were over 60 visits because it was 18 years, remember? And remember, he had gone to jail within that 18 years for a drugs offence. He'd gone back to jail. And there's not a lot of chat about that except the fact that Nancy took over for looking after Jaycee. But on that, they had like a little yellow box so every time they had entered the house. And it was most of the time, maybe half the time, but they'd always been stopped. They'd never got into the backyard. No one ever checked anything else. They were just like, yeah, it's good. We're all good here.
I think in some ways I can understand them not getting into the backyard, and clearly I don't understand the role in the system well enough.
Yep.
What I can't get is if he's not allowed to have underage people around him, and there is one.
I know.
What? Yeah. So my first person I have issue with is the deputy, and then the other one is that whole parole thing. My God, I'm shocked now that there was a juvenile in the house, and they just went, yeah, but I can kind of understand it. I don't need to verify it. I'll make one call, and that actually doesn't verify it. It actually adds more weight to the problem. But, not today. I'm busy, and therefore not ever. That stuff I just don't come at all well.
Well, it must have been a big shake-up after this because it really, a lot of people would have felt, well, I did see people interviewed, people were really angry when they found out that he was living in their street, in their community. They were just like, what? How have you allowed this to happen? It wasn't simply the Dugards who were, put off by all of this. It was really what is going on with our system statewide that this is allowed to happen. Because what I've come to realise is I think I underestimate sometimes how many people are on the sex offenders list and how prevalent they are in certain areas. Not even areas, that's not a fair thing to say, but just generally. It's worrying, that's for sure. What are your thoughts, Schmitty?
Well, I just don't think rapists should be allowed out of jail. I take a really hard line around rape and, kidnapping and everything that this man has done from the 70s onwards.
Yep.
In the context of sentencing, I'm with Clarkey in that the system's failed significantly. The system failed from day one where they allowed this man out of jail after 11 years instead of doing, or 5 to, that's right, he got moved.
5
and then
to
it
life.
Went 5 to life.
And he did 7 months of that, yeah.
Just that's where I got
That's the
7 months
numbers
from.
that just don't seem to make sense, do they? They're ridiculous.
You go life, or we put you in trial by wine world in the back of nowhere where you can't hurt or rape anyone. And to that end, I'm going to insert a glass pencil-shaped or straw-shaped Shearer cylinder and shatter it in his penis.
Oh!
So that he can't rape anyone because he is deformed and in pain and possibly pustulous for the rest of his living years. And this particular individual deserves that. So I'm going to just park that where he's sitting in the back of Trial by Wine World with his big pustulous penis, and we're going to leave him there. Secondly, Carla's grossed
Can he
out.
also be made to eat a bag of those dicks?
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't have to eat a bag of dicks. He just has to lie there in agony and thinking about that his cure for himself is wrong and that everything about him is wrong. Anyway.
I think your punishment would cure him of future rapes and whatnot.
Well, it would hopefully stop him being able to commit other rapes, and then by keeping him...
You wouldn't need to write a 5-page essay and give it to the FBI to say, hey, he's
how to do it, yeah. For many years, there's been this debate about chemical castration of rapists, and the fear is that people who commit rape, because rape's generally not about sex, it's about control and power. And and or hurting someone else. So, if you take away the means for someone to be a rapist, do they then become a murderer? And that's why we put him in the back of Trial by Wine World, where he can't hurt anyone and he's just going to sit there with his pustule stick. And I'm okay with that. Then we got Nancy. I think Nancy needs to be tasered regularly because
every hour on the hour.
Well, I don't know about every hour on the hour because she's got to recover a bit, and then it's more like I like.
Does she though?
I like the element of surprise, right? So because that's what happened with poor old Jaycee, right? She's just getting off the bus or she's just going to school, and suddenly she gets snatched and she gets tasered, and she didn't see that coming. I think Nancy needs to live in a world of perpetual terror because someone's going to taser that bitch, but she won't know when it's coming.
Can she be locked in a cage too?
Hold that thought for your own sentencing, but for me, I'm just running around tasering her when she's least expecting it. She's on the toilet, taser. She's down at the shops, taser. She's watching Shopping Network, taser. Just when she least expects it. And then there's a whole bunch of people who really should just have massive performance appraisals about whether or not they do their jobs properly, from the deputy sheriff through to the parole office. So all those people need a really serious career-wise dressing down. And that's probably where I'm going to go with that. Over to you guys.
Whilst I totally agree, and that I've through this story, I've clearly been
happy days
disappointed with how it was dealt with and how many times there are opportunities for people to see something, to notice something, to do their job. I'm going to park that because I think that's in and of itself, really criminal, but I'm just going to focus on Philip. I think what would be most frustrating for Philip is Philip had got to a point in his life where he was so impassioned about this God's desire and what he thought were his findings, and the fact that, he had been cured of his sexual deviance and he was going to help the world, and the fact that he was trying to get the FBI involved. I think a real punishment for him would be perhaps locking him up. We can put this on one of the backlots of Trial by Wine World. Let's get one of the sheds that is like, we'll do it as the studio. Let's fit it like it was. Let's have him handcuffed there in the nude for eternity, so he can't access his parts that he likes to. And have him on maybe a constant call to the FBI trying to get through to somebody who he can speak to about his 4-page essay that he's left. Because I think that he'd find it very frustrating to know that he's got this brilliant piece of work that he has, come upon over these 18 years of having kidnapped a girl.
Can he just reach their voicemail every time?
And get put through to the wrong person.
And he's just there naked, can't access himself. He's handcuffed, that's very important. He has no other stimulus. He can't see anyone. He can't see anything. He's just on this constant loop of trying to hear back from, so he could just set a meeting up with somebody about his essay. And I did read somewhere that they did come back. The FBI came back and confirmed that he had left that. It was called. Oh, here we go. FBI spokesman Joseph Shather confirmed that Garrido had indeed left the documents with the agency as he had claimed, but declined to discuss further details. The document was titled "Origin of Schizophrenia Revealed."
What?
It was eventually released by the FBI. It was about stopping schizophrenics from turning violent and controlling sounds with the human mind. So a bit random. But yeah, I don't know there's a big audience for that, but he's just a nut job.
Can we do a peer review on that?
to do anything, I think it'd be a waste to come up with something terribly macabre to do to him, because I just don't think he'd care. He's just beyond gone. And Nancy, I can't be bothered, really. That's my punishment. They're a waste of space. Right. Have you done your punishment already?
I don't know. I'm just lost.
I know, it's disappointed. You're disappointed in people, aren't you?
Glass rod.
I'm completely comfortable with the glass rod thing. I think, Schmitty, to your point, this bloke is a rapist in the truest sense of the word. It's not we had
I know what you mean.
a very long, drawn out court battle, and it got passed on a very close call, in which case you might go, maybe we don't want to go the glass rod. He deserves a glass rod 110%. Bit of cobbling. There's just so many things that I think he needs, and I'm okay with them being recurring, so that it's not just a once-off. The glass rod is great because it's going to be a punishment for the rest of eternity, but I feel like I'd probably want to chuck a few more in at him. I'm not sure what the equivalent is for Nancy, but maybe there's an equivalent glass rod that we can give to her that
Maybe a little grenade or something.
keeps her in pain for the rest of eternity too. Yeah, she's 100%.
Glass rod.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. I think I don't want to understate her role in this, because
No.
the fact that they've done a tag team. Don't worry, I'll look after them while you're in jail.
Oh,
If there was any kind of opportunity for her to go,
Yeah.
right, I'm no longer under his spell, I can make right now, that's the time to do it. And therefore, I don't see any...
100%.
Yeah.
Let's glass rod the bitch. Yeah. That'll do.
Excellent. Well, I did want to finish by saying two things.
Yes.
One was I haven't actually even told you the sentences that they got, which is a bit remiss of me.
Glass
So,
rod.
on
I
June
thought...
2012, Garita was sentenced to 431 years
See?
to life imprisonment. It's just
On
but
top
he
of his
also
other
had life
50.
earlier.
so that probably equivalent to about that probably comes down to about 4.
You can have
Um,
1 billion years in jail.
And his wife Nancy, she got 36 years to life. So they're both still
Is that like...
incarcerated. Oh, sorry, that would have been loud.
How old was she when she got 36 years to life?
Oh, let's have a look.
Let's have a look.
She was born. I'm not doing the math on this. I'm telling you, I'm not doing the math. She was born in 1955, and she was imprisoned. This is math. Can you do it, Schmitty?
I'll try.
She was sentenced 2011.
So
how old was she
56.
at the time?
56.
So-
56, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's going to...
Yeah, so she
I'm
could-
just wondering
she'll
whether
get
the
out.
36 years to life is like 36 years to 50 years or 36 years to
Yeah.
20 years.
Neither here nor there, is it? It's like whatever.
Yeah, righto. Good point.
And a final thought, which was I just wanted to let you know what Jaycee's been up to. So, first of all, in the first couple of years after she was out, I think by about 2000, it was in 2011, yeah, she wrote a book which is called A Stolen Life, a memoir. It's a tearjerker, I bet it is.
I bet it is.
Yeah, and I have seen her interviewed, and she's quite a remarkable young woman. Interestingly, she is not interestingly, it's probably pretty obvious actually, she's totally the pin-up girl for the National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children, because she gives hope to people who have, had children.
Lost their children.
Oh, could you imagine?
And don't know if
Yeah.
they'll ever come back, yeah.
And I saw the guy who is the head of it, and he says she is absolutely instrumental to showing people why we never stop. We never stop until we have a body.
She's not the only story of a child
No.
who disappeared and came back later.
Not at all.
There are lots that don't.
Correct. But the idea is that you mustn't stop looking. You just keep going. And I guess this is very relevant given we're looking at, the Madeleine McCann thing has come up again in the last week or so. I guess, you hear people go, oh, that's the end of that. She's, But I mean, as her parents, you just can't give up hope, I guess, until you have something concrete.
If you lost a child, like you always want to believe they're still alive somewhere and you'll see them again, but
18
you
years.
still want to, but you want to know what happened one way or the other.
Yes.
You don't get any closure. I can't imagine the torture for people who have lost their children, who their children have been taken from them by other people, and they just don't know what happened to them. It's unimaginable for me. Yeah. It's just the worst thing ever.
Well, I've had a few bad days at work, Schmitty, and I would like to have a chat to Jaycee to just compare bad days to see, whether mine was worse.
It does provide you with an
some
extraordinary amount of perspective, doesn't it? Yeah.
So that's it. I think that the upshot is that Jaycee is in a really good place, and I've seen her interviewed shortly thereafter and more recently, and her girls are both at college.
What a remarkable
They have a very small, very tight-knit family around them who know the true story. They don't share who they are, obviously, with people or their backstory, but the girls are at college, and Jaycee is doing marvellously well. She was awarded by Diane von Furstenberg a Courage Award, and she was on stage with Oprah, so she she works within those circles where she's trying to help people, particularly families of children who are missing, having been
Lost
abducted.
children.
Yeah. So that'd be pretty heart-wrenching work, and I guess she's best placed to do that. So good on her. So there is some light in this story, and that is it.
Well, I've got to say, that was a really, actually, very, very tough story. So thank you. And as the mother of us, not the mother of us, who didn't actually give birth to me or...
Imagine being the mother of
my
both
daughter.
you and I, Schmitty. God.
Oh, well, you've met my mother.
No, but being the
But
one mother for both of us, like...
Exactly. What did you do wrong? As the mother amongst us, that was actually, I think, quite brave to address such a difficult subject matter. So well done.
Thank you.
So,
as I said, I did start, it sort of set me off at one point. And I mean, if you watch any of the stuff, and I would just have a look at the Diane Sawyer interviews, because it's done so well. And that meant that I was so upset. But then at the back of, it's all this other stuff.
I've watched fictional stories about people who've gone through incredible trauma, and I cry. So,
my mood shifted.
The real stuff.
My mood shifted from being, like weepy to what the fuck when I started looking at who this guy was, the backstory. There was we talk about, alarm bells and red flags, whatever else. It was all there again. My poor children are going to be reminded again tonight of, if someone approaches you, what to do, how, all of that stuff a million times.
Well, I've done a bit of that since we started doing this
podcast. Well, it's true. I know.
People. If you go somewhere on your own, can you drop a pin?
Well,
Tell
this
us
is
where
the
you
thing.
are,
They were saying that the place that most children get abducted is actually on the way to school, to and from school, when they're a little bit relaxed, they're often on their own. I was like, oh, my God. So my poor kids are
in the middle of a busy street, getting off a bus, getting tasered and taken away.
That'll do it. That will do it.
Extraordinary.
Yeah. Excellent.
Anyway, absolutely brilliant job. And as we say every week, miss you already.
Ciao, me lovelies.
Ciao. I don't know why we went to England just then, but I'm glad we did. All right. Ciao.
See you guys. Good chat. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine, or visit our website, www.trialbywine.com, to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from pixabay.com.